Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. One of my long side quests for a while on this gaming channel has been to produce deep dive videos covering every video game from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. Thus far we have already covered all of the home console and arcade games from the classic era of Turtles gaming. So now we are making our way through the games that were available on the Nintendo Gameboy. In today's content we are going to look at an often overlooked gem known as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Radical Rescue, a video game that plays and functions vastly different to the previous Game Boy entries in the series, arguably making the game the most interesting of the entire bunch. So within this video, let's break down what makes this criminally underrated adventure so special and how it separates itself from the pack by featuring a Metroidvania style of gameplay, delivered by Konami years before the release of even Castlevania Symphony of the Night. This game has had more influence on gaming than many people think, so join me today as we celebrate this game's legacy. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Radical Rescue, the other Turtles 3. Yeah! The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was a franchise that was by far the most popular in existence when it came to children's entertainment and merchandise. But despite all of these previous years of success, there is no doubt about it that by 1993, that the Turtles were beginning to get a bit long in the shell. While still having an active audience, the decline was clear to see, with TV show ratings dropping, toy sales declining, and that third god-awful live-action movie, which certainly did not do the brand any favours either, with a drop in quality being clearly evident. While in most marketing areas the Turtles could have been doing better, in the world of video games things had been pretty strong. The previous summer of 1992 had seen the greatest Turtles game ever brought to the Super Nintendo, in the form of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Turtles in Time, and the Sega Mega Drive received a classic beat-em-up of its own in the form of Hyperstone Heist. But despite these two games' overall fantastic quality, the concept of the beat-em-up video game itself was beginning to dwindle in significance too, with the fighting game genre, led by Street Fighter 2, now outpacing it. This meant that with both Turtles and the beat-em-up genre's popularity itself declining, Japanese company Konami felt they needed to start trying some new things with the amphibious foursome. This would lead to changes in the way we would get to experience Turtles games, with the first of these being Turtles Tournament Fighter for the Super Nintendo, a Street Fighter 2-esque fighting game that featured the Turtles and other characters from their universe competing in one-on-one versus fighting matches. This game, released in September of 1993, would later be accompanied by further fighting games that shared the same name, but released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Sega Mega Drive. But despite sharing the name, these three games are completely different titles. Now, after the Super Nintendo Fighter, but prior to the Mega Drive and NES games, in October of 1993, gamers would get another brand new Turtles game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Radical Rescue, released on the Nintendo Game Boy. As mentioned in the early phases of this video, this would be yet another title that deviated from the beat-em-up format that had been featured so prominently in the franchise's gaming past. Previously, we have already looked at the first two Game Boy games created by Konami. We first would receive Fall of the Foot Clan in 1991, which was a simple pick-up and play platforming game where players would need to traverse from A to B through a variety of stages, whacking many enemies with weapons along the way. The second game, released later that very same year, would be another platforming affair. However, this time the game would feature, in my opinion, improved graphics, but additionally many beat-em-up mechanics and stage areas where influence seems to have come from the popular arcade games. The third game, Radical Rescue, that we are looking at today, drops the brawler elements in favour of a playstyle that 2D games from Konami would come to be somewhat synonymous with in the future, as Radical Rescue features Metroidvania style gameplay. Now, I must admit, Metroidvania is a cheesy portmanteau that I have never particularly been too fond of, as platforming maze style games predate both the Metroid and Castlevania franchises. Check out Jet Set Willy, for example, with its multi-room platforming maze gaming, where players must collect various objects in order to progress. This game was created years before Castlevania and Metroid, and was simply made by a teenager in his bedroom here in England, predating anything like this that wealthy corporations in Japan had yet to come up with. The term Metroidvania seems to have come into circulation after the success of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which, like Metroid, featured a large interconnected world map that players can explore, though access to parts of this world is often limited by doors or other obstacles that can only be passed once the player has acquired special items, tools, weapons or abilities within the game. One would imagine this term was partially used to differentiate the difference between 2D Castlevania games post Symphony of the Night, and most of those that came before it were played as traditional 2D side-scrolling platformers. But there are exceptions to this rule too, such as Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest for example, a title that could easily be placed in the Metroidvania box. So I guess when you look at the root of the word Metroidvania, it was simply coined out of two games' popularities rather than games that pioneered the genre themselves. Speaking of Metroidvania games before the word bloody existed, Radical Rescue fits perfectly into this genre's box. So let's take a deeper look at this quirky Konami Symphony of the Night precursor. When powering the Game Boy first on, the game presents players with an introductory sequence illustrating that this time around Shredder has not only managed to kidnap April O'Neil, but the Turtles' master Splinter, along with 3 out of 4 of the Turtles, leaving just Michelangelo with the challenging task of rescuing all of his friends. All Michelangelo's allies are being held captive in a sprawling maze that has been constructed by the game's main antagonist, so it is up to Michelangelo to enter this heinous labyrinth in order to navigate it and free everyone. Upon starting to play through, gamers take control of our lone turtle as he traverses a woodland area, giving the player the opportunity to get to grips with the game's controls for the first time. Michelangelo can strike Shredder's foot soldiers with his weapon to take them out, and players soon learn that he can additionally use his weapon as a propeller to remain in the air longer and use it to reach trees that are not in jumping distance. Once inside the maze itself, if players hit the select button, a map can be accessed, illustrating the sheer size of the area that needs to be navigated within the game. The map though on it has black dots placed on certain rooms to represent points of interest, instantly giving gamers a good idea of where to head, so players are given at least some direction with regards to where to attempt to go. Within this large, sometimes confusing labyrinth, players can locate whole pizzas, where, if collected, they are stored as held items that fully replenish a character's health if a turtle's life bar is completely depleted. In addition to this, enemies sometimes drop pizza slices that replenish a life bar instantly if any life is missing. Another major item in the games are keys that are needed to be collected to access certain areas. Players gain the opportunity to gain one of these whenever they reach a boss fight and manage to defeat them. First we have Scratch, a mutated cat who sports a traditional convict uniform. Scratch is apparently best known for having one of the most sought after Turtles action figures ever made to represent him, a toy that all Turtle collectors would like to own. Defeating him, which I must say is tough if you do not know the pattern, earns Michelangelo a key. Once in possession of this key, it allows the Turtle to unlock one of his friends, in this case Leonardo, which is the equivalent to getting a power up within a Metroid game, as Leonardo has different capabilities to Michelangelo, allowing the twosome to now be able to access previously inaccessible areas. Now I mentioned that Michelangelo had the ability to use a propeller to cross areas without touching the ground. Well, Leonardo can use his katanas to drill through blocks in the floor, opening up further areas for exploration. In addition to the keys that can be collected from bosses to free allies, key cards must be gathered too, which are simply used to unlock sliding doors leading to previously inaccessible rooms. The next big boss players must take down when managing to reach him in this monochrome maze is Dirtbag, another antagonist from the Turtles universe who appeared both in the TV show and had his own action figure. Dirtbag has the ability to jump up high and try and slam down into the player using his axe, as well as utilising the ability to launch Turtles up using his devastating uppercuts. But of course, beating him leads to another key that can be used to gain another ally. Freeing Raphael from his confines of course grants players with further abilities, with Raphael being able to retract into his shell, allowing him to move through tiny spaces. This power up is amusingly just the same as the Morph Ball from Metroid, so definitely a power up that most gamers would be fully aware of how to use. Wielding this combination of different abilities, once getting past more new areas, gamers will eventually reach a boss fight against a Triceraton, a character from a race in the Turtles franchise that have continued to make appearances ever since they showed up in the original Mirage comics. The Triceraton can charge opponents like a Triceratops, but can also use his machine gun to unleash various other attacks. Of course, defeating him rewards players with a key to unlock Rembrandt. Once players have found this last turtle, he houses the ability to climb walls Spider-Man style, once again opening up the huge maze even further. Now, with all abilities unlocked after a great deal of exploration, eventually the turtles reach Skowtow, a serpentine alien bounty hunter hired by Shredder to stop the Ninja Turtles. The boss, who can shoot projectiles from his mouth that explode into fire plumes, defeat once again leads to players earning yet another key. This key allows the turtles to rescue Splinter, who warns them of the dangers that lie ahead, as he reminds them that they still need to save April. It is worth pointing out that each radical rescue comes with a password, which can be used to restore players' progress if they get a game over, which, to be fair, in this often challenging game is a common occurrence, especially considering only one turtle has to die rather than all four of them. Saving Splinter allows the turtles to exit his cell through a different door, accessing yet another new area, but it's onwards to rescue April. While at this point it may feel like to players they are in the final stretch, the last throws of the game offer some tricky platforming, but most significantly a boss rush, where the turtles must take on every boss in the game all over again in a gauntlet of fights, pretty much testing all the skills they would have picked up previously. To be fair, this all feels very Mega Man, but speaking of Mega Man's influence, it is clearly taken from the series because it's further illustrated by the dual gates players must pass through prior to every boss fight. If that's not a homage, I don't know what is. After defeating all of these opponents again, the turtles must finally take on Shredder himself, who, as you would likely expect, has the largest range of attack patterns in the game, making him the toughest enemy to face off against yet. After finally beating him, he drops the last key, allowing the turtles to free April O'Neil, finally concluding the original Game Boy trilogy of games for good. Now, looking back at all of what we looked at today, the game is clearly a huge departure from anything any Turtles game had delivered gamers with previously. But was all of this for the better? Well, I guess the answer to such a question is debatable, and completely subjective anyway. As while the first two Turtles Game Boy games were awesome linear platforming experiences, the complexity of Radical Rescue obviously brings a lot more depth and welcomes exploration with open arms. Like any Metroidvania game, at times this can be a double-edged sword, as the genre certainly has its downsides, such as the necessary backtracking which is included, and of course the points when players get frustratingly lost, or do not know how to progress. The Game Boy's tiny screen and small monochrome display can at points exacerbate these problems, as the Nintendo handheld's limited colour palette often makes areas look more samey than those found in games on systems with full colour displays. Radical Rescue is not the only game that suffers from these issues, as obviously Metroid 2 The Return of Samus on the hardware suffers from exactly the same problems. As good as this game was, could you imagine how much better this would have been if Konami attempted a game with the same formula on the Super Nintendo or Sega Mega Drive? We could have got something extremely special, as even this game is great considering the limitations that Konami would have contended with to make the title on the 8-bit device. In many ways, I guess the game is almost like a Symphony of the Night prototype, a game that would obviously go on to be known as one of the greatest Metroidvania games of all time, and even coining the term itself. But as great as Symphony of the Night was, Radical Rescue is the forgotten missing link between that title and Simon's Quest in my opinion, as Radical Rescue is the first game I believe Konami created where the characters have to use specific acquired new abilities to progress through a maze, rather than just items themselves such as keys for example. All in all, regardless of its pros and cons, there is no denying that this is by far one of the most unique games in the classic Turtles video game series, and its style of play would echo through Konami history, with many of the different Castlevania titles that would precede this interesting Game Boy game. For this reason, I feel it is slightly criminal that this game's significance gets somewhat glazed over in 2021. with I imagine many people not even realising that this game exists by this point in time. Let's hope today's video slightly changes that, and at least a few more people give this game a well-deserved chance. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Radical Rescue, wrapping up coverage of all the Turtles games that were available on the original Game Boy. When it comes to Turtles games, let me know what direction you would like to see me take with regards to the Turtles franchise next. Let me know this in the comment section down below. Further from this, if you love gaming content, my wife Lady Decade has just uploaded a 23-minute documentary covering the history of how the Sony PlayStation won the console wars over on her own channel. So I will pin a comment to this video so that you can check out her channel soon. Speaking of the pinned comment, both of us chat with viewers of this channel in the Top Pack Gaming Man Discord, so I will also pin an invitational link so that all you lovely people can join and chat retro gaming with us day to day. The comment section may be tough for me to keep up with, but I can make time for everyone over on Discord. It's a bit like the old school AOL chat rooms, so retro too I guess, so I hope to see you all over there. Finally, I would like to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports my work over on Patreon, allowing me to produce content like this full time. So special thank yous go out to Sebastian Velez, The Murder of Crows, Carl Johnson, Heo Paulo Lopez, Nostalgia Collector, Ban, Haradine, Corey Imar Senior, Capcom vs SNK, BXL Gotham, Ryan Dinch, Evan Border, Philip Namp, Azure Arkai, Keith Ferguson, Dropkin Varela, Michael Cullix, Ego, Jordan Durant, Angel Light 85, Ian Boyle, Nick Daniels, Princess Zana, Daniel Daly, Computer Man, House of a Ted, Gary Pinkett, ECU Professor, Kid Anime, Justin Wang, Aaron McNamara, Hermes Gonzalez, Instant Gratification Monkey, Man Shovel, James Bishop, JB, Michael Hall, Wesley Sanghi, Fellatio, Langston Miller, Noob, Brian Barry, Sarah Powell, Vlaming Renee, Marinara Liga, Chris Call, TOG Driver, Adrian Hannington, Bernard NG, Richard Stewart, Dan Van Dammit, Lewis Viant, John Bates, David Bowell, Chris Fisk, Mike Bruno, Rick67, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, RetroReverse.com, Casey Wright, Sync Spaces, Azai, Andrew Bazansky, Alex Summers, and Gunther Hendricks. I would like to thank all of you so much for helping me do what I do. Magical. Yeah. Cheerio.